Jim the Ape One Proof. Hello again, humans. It is I, Jim the Ape, and for my first proper video of 2018, I'm going to be responding to a video that I wanted to make a response to since late 2017, at about the time my previous laptop died. And I feel obligated to warn you that Dr. Randomercam responded to the same video, and it was excellent in my opinion, so there's a good chance that if you boil down my responses and his responses and compare the two, mine will basically amount to just a giant what he said. But I will do my best to put my own spin on it and make it distinct from his response at least, if not make it an entirely unique or original response. So with that disclaimer out of the way, let's get right into the stupid.
Male fragility is a problem. That's why we're reviewing 2017's greatest moments in male fragility so far.
I have to stop you already. So, you know how feminists are always saying how men need to express their emotions more and learn to be more sensitive? Well, this is what they do when men actually do that. They mock it as male fragility and drink from mugs with male tears written on them. Not that I care, it's actually pretty funny because that's basically a euphemism for semen. But I guarantee you, not as many people would find it acceptable if it was the other way around. And that's what really bothers me. Double standards and hypocrisy.
And because we've already covered the fragility of these guys, and of course, this guy.
Yes, the tiki torch wielding white nationalists were a laughingstock, and rightfully so. And yes, the President of the United States does get rather sensitive when it comes to criticism. But unlike certain other politicians, he doesn't blame all criticism on something as superficial as gender. Also, how about the fragility of thousands of Democrats when Hillary lost the election? I mean, when the results were announced, there was basically a montage of people being absolutely hysterical crybabies about it. If that's not fragility, I don't know what is.
We're gonna go over the moments you might have missed. Fragility at the box office, in the workforce, and yes, over one's hypothetical murder.
Well, I can't wait to debunk them all and win a prize! Also, can anyone out there tell me how emotionally reacting to murder, hypothetical or otherwise, is fragility? It's a pretty serious subject. Perhaps one of the most serious subjects of conversation that exists in our little corner of the universe.
Oh, it goes deep.
That's what she said! I regret nothing. Oh great, another Francesca. I'm sure this'll go just as swimmingly as the last time. On the plus side, maybe I'll come up with another great soundbite to use in future videos like I did with the "fuck your feelings" bit.
Before we go on, let's just clarify that we at Newsbroke love men. Matt is a man. Our camera guy Hugo is a man. Our content strategist is of course a man.
I don't hate Mexicans. I love Mexicans. My gardener is Mexican. My housekeeper is Mexican. My chauffeur is Mexican. My plumber is Mexican. Are you starting to see the point I'm making here? You claim to love men, and then you go on to list all the men that are your servants. Yeah, they're paid servants, so it's not exactly slavery, but neither does it prove that you don't have an overall negative view of men. It just proves you can tolerate being around them as long as they're doing things for you.
My cat is my cat's a lady. Thank God. What?
You know you're a sexist when you breathe a sigh of relief that your pet, a non-human animal, is not the sex that you generally hate while claiming simultaneously to love, and that you just revealed to be your subordinate servant class. It must be very strange living in your head with all these blatantly contradictory thoughts and emotions.
And while patriarchy—
Pickle Rick! Sorry, I had to do that for the doctor. I know it's embarrassing to spout Rick and Morty memes, especially due to certain individuals standing upon McDonald's countertops.
I want Szechuan sauce. Where's my Szechuan sauce? I'm Pickle Rick! What below the dum dum? I'm Pickle Rick! 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 I'm Pickle Rick! Rick! Rick!
Just watch Dr. Randomer Cam's video, Stiff Upper Elephant, and you'll see why I did that. Moving on.
He might concretely hurt women in the form of sexual assault, unequal pay.
It has been illegal to pay women less for the same work since 1963. It's called the Equal Pay Act of 1963. Read it and weep, bitch!
And a wasted afternoon watching makeup tutorials. Talking about patriarchy can hurt male feelings. It's called male fragility.
And feminists never talk about hurt feelings or use emotion in place of an actual argument, right?
Defensiveness at the discussion of sexism, and the inability to accept or take some responsibility for inequalities between men and women by acting like, and I don't use this word often, a whiny bitch.
1. That's 3 words, dumbass. 2. Why the fuck did you censor yourself? Bitch is a word that you can hear on daytime television, for fuck's sake. And 3. I will take responsibility for my actions and my actions alone. Nothing more, nothing less. Don't go blaming me for shit that I had nothing to do with, and or shit that happened long before I even existed.
In a world where multi-million-dollar superhero movies never have female protagonists,
welcome to my fucking wheelhouse. Prepare to get run over. Let's start with female-led superhero movies and TV shows. There's Catwoman and Elektra, which admittedly were both flops. There was a Supergirl movie that bombed, but the character of Kara Zor-El found more success in her recent incarnation in a television series that first aired on CBS and then moved to the CW to join the Arrowverse. Netflix has a series starring Kristen Ritter as lovable alcoholic and superpowered PI Jessica Jones, which is getting a second season. It could also be argued that the more recent X-Men films centered around Mystique and basically became the Jennifer Lawrence show. Not to mention the upcoming Dark Phoenix movie starring Sophie Turner, aka Sansa Stark. Harley Quinn was basically the lead of Suicide Squad, which was a movie that I had mixed feelings about, but it's undeniable she was given a prominent role. On Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., there may not be a lead character per se, it's more of an ensemble cast, but the most powerful Inhuman on the show is Daisy Johnson, aka Quake, and the best non-superpowered fighter is Melinda May. Not to mention the character of Sarah Lance, aka White Canary on Legends of Tomorrow, who not only became the captain of the time-traveling Wave Rider and the de facto lead of the show, but did so while being bisexual and mostly being attracted to other women. And there are even more strong female protagonists in superhero shows and movies when you factor in characters who aren't necessarily the lead. There's White Canary's counterpart, Black Canary, on Arrow, a title held by 2 different characters, Dinah Laurel Lance, Sarah's sister, and Dinah Drake. There's Black Widow in the Avengers movies. There's also Nyssa Al Ghul on Arrow, who starts off as more of a villain, but becomes more of an ally to the protagonists due to her love for Sarah Lance. Come to think of it, Catwoman often ends up being mostly an ally to Batman, just with some kleptomaniac tendencies. Also, there's Killer Frost on The Flash, who is supposed to be a villain, but often ends up helping the heroes due to her connection to them via her alter ego, Caitlin Snow. And if you include strong female protagonist characters that don't have superpowers or suit up for battle, the list gets even longer. Felicity Smoke on Arrow and Iris West on The Flash are 2 excellent examples that come to mind. In fact, many female love interests for male superheroes end up being pretty strong characters in their own right, although the occasional bland one does exist. I'm looking at you, Natalie Portman in the Thor movies. Granted, this list is by no means as extensive as it could be if I really wanted to find every strong female character in superhero media, mostly because I don't want this video to be 5 hours long. And I deliberately left out arguably the biggest example of a strong female superhero protagonist because that's exactly who our intrepid internet show host is about to mention.
where girlfriends nationwide sit through yet another Transformers sequel. One theater chain dared to show screenings of Wonder Woman for women only, and people got thank we?
I didn't. Like with most things, I didn't give a shit. And based on that tweet, it was for some charity type thing, which I guess could be good as long as it's not one of those charities that lines their own pockets with the money. But that's beside the point. The reason the theater got backlash for it was because when you're a public business that sells goods or services, but you exclude customers of any given demographic on the basis of something as superficial as gender, guess what? That's discrimination. And that's not me saying that to shame the theater. What they did fits the actual legal definition of discrimination. And that's why they got a ton of shit for it.
It's hypocrisy at its finest. It's horseshit at its finest.
God damn it. It's like looking in a fucking mirror every time.
But I'm telling you, these feminists are just female supremacists.
If this is deemed okay, if we can have women-only screenings of Wonder Woman, then what's stopping us from having man-only screenings of movies?
Shame. Shame is what stops you. And the smell. Shame and the smell.
And women don't have any shame, am I right? Also, if you think your body doesn't stink, try going without all your feminine hygiene products for a while and tell me how many olfactory-related compliments you get.
Because men who believe in real equality in the real world know that women getting together to watch a movie about a goddess warrior doesn't pose a real threat. Plus, our goddess armies aren't ready yet. I've said too much.
Well, that was a lame joke.
And there are men-only screenings of films. It's called Entourage. But the Alamo did apologize to the city of Austin after 2 men filed complaints, even though, as one guy so bravely proved, theaters didn't actually prevent men from buying tickets to the all-female show.
Shocking news! Local business takes money from customers. More at 11.
They just figured you wouldn't want to be that guy mansplaining reverse sexism during the previews.
Ugh, how many things were wrong with that sentence? First of all, there's no such thing as reverse sexism, but not for the reasons you probably think. No matter which sex the prejudice or discrimination is against, it's just sexism. Secondly, mansplaining is just the needlessly gendered term for a behavior that anyone and everyone engages in. It's called talking in a way that someone might find condescending or rude. Literally everybody who is physically capable of speech does that. Stop acting like that's something that only men do to only women. And last but not least, he wouldn't even have the chance to be that guy if they didn't let him into the theater to begin with, as the women-only theme would seem to suggest that they wouldn't. I don't know if they did or didn't because I don't care enough to look it up, but whatever.
Next up is James Damore. You might have heard of Damore, a former Google engineer who was fired for internally circulating a memo that called Google's minority outreach and inclusion efforts discrimination, saying that those efforts were a waste on account of biological differences between men and women.
You heard right, folks. A man who was fired from his job and lost his position at one of the biggest companies in the world for saying things that women didn't like is an example of male fragility. Honestly, you can't make up this kind of ass-backwards doublethink retardation.
Yeah, that's him wearing a shirt that says Gulag, because Google is exactly like a Soviet work camp, except for the nap pods, volleyball, free sushi, haircuts, and massages. But other than that, it's pretty much Stalinism.
Are you sure you want to talk about communism like it's a bad thing? I mean, I agree with you there, but your far-left audience might not entirely be on board with that. Also, he's not allowed to partake in any of those things anymore on account of having been fired. And the gulag metaphor pertains more to the thought policing that resulted in him being fired.
After he was fired, Damore denied arguing that women were less capable than men at being engineers.
It's not that they're less capable, it's just that they're less interested in becoming engineers. Even from birth, boys are more interested in mechanical objects, and girls are more interested in faces. I happen to find that perfectly understandable given what I know about human behavior, and I'm pretty sure there have been studies that prove these tendencies, but again, I'm a lazy fuck, so I'm not gonna look them up.
It was that you idiots reading his 3,300-word memo complete with several citations that actually didn't cite anything didn't understand him.
Am I just supposed to take your word that they didn't cite anything? Because I don't trust you nearly as far as I can throw you, because that might actually be pretty far. But whatever, I don't usually cite anything either, so even if you're right, he's no worse than me.
Even one of the researchers Damore cited...
Ah, so he did cite something after all. So either you're a fucking liar, or you're too stupid to realize you just contradicted yourself. Probably both.
Wrote a response to the memo saying Damore misused his science. He said, quote, using someone's biological sex to essentialize an entire group of people's personality is like surgically operating with an axe. To which Damore said, actually women are biologically incapable of using axes. I mean, why are men lumberjacks? Science.
Another lame joke. But you know what? Your straw man actually has a point. Not that women are physically incapable of using axes, but that labor-intensive jobs like lumberjacks are held mostly by men, because the biological differences between men and women that you're trying to deny even exist include men being physically stronger than women, both on average and at the extremes. Men are also more prone to risk-taking, so they also dominate the most dangerous jobs. And one last thing before we move on. I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay. I sleep all night and I work all day.
He's a lumberjack and he's okay. He sleeps all night and he works all day.
But no matter, Damore, who says he may sue Google, has fittingly become a darling of the alt-right, which has both cheered him on and coddled him.
What's it been like for you? I mean, is it hard to sleep? Is it hard to concentrate?
So Stefan Molyneux is alt-right, is he? I'm seriously asking, I legitimately have no idea. But what I do know is that I just heard that Damore has a better than decent chance of winning his case against Google. So does this mean Richard Spencer will be hailing victory again? I don't know, and I don't care.
Yeah, it's definitely been hard to sleep. There was a surprising amount of attacks that were just at my race and gender.
Yes, having people classify you based on gender and race when you just want to live your life sucks. Women and people of color know exactly how that feels.
So it's okay when we do it to white men then, is it? You can act as though all the discrimination faced by women and non-white people throughout history is just a never-ending snowball effect of cumulative suffering that just continues to get worse and worse for those demographics to this very day, and then you use that as a justification to not give a shit about the suffering of white men, no matter how recent or severe it is. You disgust me. You prop up the ghosts of victims past to victimize people in the present. Have you ever heard of the expression, two wrongs don't make a right?
And look, you've gotten job offers from other men in your male-dominated field that don't even know you, but just assume that you'd be qualified.
He was an engineer for fucking Google who only got fired for wrongthink, aka nothing to do with him being bad at his job. So of course he got job offers from other tech companies. And by the way, other men in your male-dominated field? Are you still going with the story that you don't hate men? Because you sounded pretty fucking salty when you said those words.
Including one from Julian Assange, because that's what happens when your only friends are Chinese takeout boxes.
And your only friend is a cat, apparently, so you might want to reconsider throwing those stones in that glass house of yours.
And the last moment of male fragility you might have missed has to do with fragility about trans women having too many rights.
Well, if hypothetically they could have you thrown in prison for using the wrong pronouns, I think that would be a step too far. Good thing that's not happening anywhere, right?
This one comes from Tucker Carlson, one of the remaining Fox hosts who hasn't faced sexual harassment charges. Although, to be honest, his show is an unwanted assault on the senses.
That joke was a stretch, and you know it.
Back in April, Carlson had Caitlyn Jenner on his show, and she talked about the murder rate of trans women. She was concerned that Attorney General Jeff Sessions didn't care.
There was a letter sent to him to try to prosecute the murderers of these trans women as hate crimes. And he never even responded, which is extremely disappointing to me.
Okay, I don't like Jeff Sessions either. I think he's a massive cunt for trying to undo all the progress made towards marijuana legalization because he thinks drugs are bad, okay? But I never got this obsession with prosecuting something as a hate crime. What does it matter? If you murder someone, isn't it just as bad whether you did it out of bigotry or not? I mean, I know it changes the motive, but does it make the actual crime itself any different? I don't get it.
A few months later, the Department of Justice did say it would prosecute trans murders as hate crimes, but that didn't stop Carlson from getting fragile over trans women having the privilege of being a hate crime victim.
Wait, so the thing that happened months after the clip you're about to show was recorded didn't go back in time and change Tucker Carlson's mind on the spot, even though it's just the thing that Caitlyn and Tucker were already talking about and that Tucker had already said he disagreed with? Seriously, go back and listen to that sentence again, bearing all that that in mind. Then take that as a cautionary tale to think before you speak.
I wonder if it's not just enough to prosecute someone for murder. Put yourself in the position of someone else. If someone you loved were killed and the murderer received a lesser sentence because your loved one was not a member of the trans community, you'd say, well, that's kind of unfair. I mean, we're all Americans.
Congratulations. You made Tucker Carlson seem like the reasonable one. Do you see what you've done?
Excuse me, what? Tucker Carlson is all lives mattering death.
Excuse me, but isn't that the whole fucking point of All Lives Matter? Or any variation on that theme now that I think about it? The whole purpose of saying X lives matter is to say that you care when those lives are unjustly taken and want justice in those cases. Which I kind of agree with, but at the same time, I'm more inclined to say that no lives matter because we're all just a bunch of dumb meat robots on a wet rock floating in the vastness of a practically infinite universe that doesn't give a fuck about our short and meaningless existence. But you can't build a society on that model, so you have to go with the perspective of all our lives mattering to us individually and as part of a greater entity, which is humanity as a whole. But this is all getting a little bit too philosophical, so let's move on.
Which coincidentally is Death's favorite game. So, movie buffs, James Damore, Tucker resting dumb-face Carlson.
Hey, it's better than resting cunt face, am I right?
Don't worry, men still have it good. You make up 85% of the tech jobs at the largest tech companies.
And 84% of the homeless.
You still have 70% of speaking roles in films.
And 78% of suicides.
And no one is saying some murder is worse than yours.
They don't say it. No, they just don't report adult male murder victims as often or as somberly as they report women and children being killed. And in cases of spousal murder, they either give women who murder their husbands a much lighter sentence than the reverse, or they let them off based on potentially false claims of abuse because that's a legally upheld, completely one-sided, gendered defense they can use. But no one is saying that a woman's murder is worse than a man's murder. They just prove that to be their opinion with their actions.
Unless anyone messes with Laverne Cox, then everyone's going to jail. Just let women have some things. Consider it our way of coping with you.
But men can't have anything to themselves, can they? That'd just be sexist.
Love you.
I sincerely doubt that, but I can assure you the feeling is not mutual. So that's the end of the video. If this video turned out to be really long and you're wondering why, well, for one thing, these kinds of left-leaning political internet shows tend to be chock full of stupid every 10 seconds or less. Not that the right-wing ones are any better, but also because I've been itching to get back in the game, so I wanted to make my first response video back a big one with everything from jokes to angry ranting to long-winded arguments to singing and just about everything else I could think of. I will try to make future videos a bit more succinct. But in the meantime, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I always appreciate that. If you didn't, I don't care. If you like my content, make sure you're subscribed and click the bell icon to get notifications whenever I upload a new video. You can follow me on Twitter and BitChute, where I post my videos as soon as they're all done and quality checked, which is usually several hours before YouTube and very late at night / early in the morning. And the best thing you can do to help me out is support me on Patreon if you can spare a few bucks. Really, any amount is greatly appreciated. As always, thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time. Stay great, apes. In a world where strong female characters are practically a requirement for a film or series to be considered good, one woman stands in defiance of the evil forces of reality. Against impossible odds, she's determined to prevail. But can she defeat the armies of badass female superheroes she claims don't even exist? Find out this summer in Francesca versus the Superwomen. Dawn of Social Justice.